You only buy a chamor if you have stuff to put on the chamor. If you can walk by yourself, you walk by yourself. If you have a lot of stuff, you need to buy a chamor to carry your stuff. So it could be he's saying that when I didn't buy any chamorim from them, it's basically saying I never had the need to buy any chamorim because I had no money, I had no packages, and therefore I was actually poor. So Gemara says, how do we know that he was rich? Like we said before, Baruch Hu Psolacha says, carve out for you, you get the leftovers. Shmuel Dichsev, how do we know that Shmuel was rich? Because it says, Hinani, Anu bi neged Hashem v'neged Meshicho et shor milakachdi v'chamor milakachdi. Did I ever take a shor or a chamor? Ibechinam lafuke man deshokel bechinam. It can't be like he's saying, like we said by Moshe, it can't be that he's saying, I never stole a shor or chamor. Eladafilu bischar, I never even bought a shor of a chamor. So we said the same thing, Dilna da'ani hava. Maybe he was poor, and that's why he never bought a shor or chamor, because he had no packages to put on top of it. Ela mehalcha, how do we know that Shmuel was rich? Uchuvas Ramasa kisham beso, because when he returned to Ramasa, he had his whole house with him. For Amarava kol makom shahalach beso imo. Everywhere he went, he had his beso with him. Right? The rich people, you know, you have a place in Thornhill, you have a place in the cottage, you have a place, and you don't just carry your stuff every time you go. Hope nobody here has a cottage. You don't carry your stuff everywhere you go. You go ahead and you have two of everything. You have two things and two sofas and two break fronts and two sets of silver and two sets of diamonds and two sets of everything. When you're rich, you have everything with you. So Shmuel had all these different places that he would stop along the way. And every place that he stopped, he had a separate set because he was so rich, he didn't need to carry anything with him. Amar Rava, Gadol ma shenemar b'Shmuel Yosef min shenemar b'Moshe. So Rava actually says that Shmuel was even richer than Moshe. Why? De'ila b'Moshe Rabbeinu ksiv lo chamor echad mehem nasasi dafilu b'schar. Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, I never even bought from them a chamor. Vilu gabe Shmuel afilu b'ratzon lo scharo. It sounds like he's learning that by Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu never bought anything against the guy's will, as the Ran explains, or as Rashi explains. That means he never coerced anybody to sell him anything. But if the guy wanted to sell him something and Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to buy it, so then Moshe Rabbeinu Einachanami would buy things from time to time. V'ilu gabe Shmuel afilu b'ratzon lo scharo dechsev hayomer lo ashaktanu v'lo ritzosanu v'go. It says by Shmuel, they never robbed us, and he never induced our consent. Which basically seems to be saying the Gemara is learning that by Shmuel, even when people wanted to sell him stuff, he didn't sell it. So again, the nafkamina would be, by Moshe Rabbeinu, the Gemara is learning, he never stole anything, obviously. He never even coerced or forced anybody. We know, like sometimes you could coerce somebody to sell you something. He never even coerced anybody to sell him something. But there were times when Moshe Rabbeinu needed to buy things. He didn't have everything in the world. He was rich, but he didn't have everything. As opposed to Shmuel, he didn't steal, he didn't coerce anybody, and he never even needed to buy anything from the people, even when the people wanted to sell him stuff, because again, he had everything that he needed. So we see that Shmuel was even richer than Moshe Rabbeinu. Amos, Amos, how do we know that Amos was rich? Because Amos said to Amatze, Lo Navi Anochi, Lo Ben Anochi, Navi Anochi. I'm not a Navi, I'm not the son of a Navi. Ki Boker Anochi, I'm a cattle herder. Ubole Shikamim, or Shpole Shikmim. I'm an examiner of sycamore trees. I have a lot of sycamore trees. Kedim Targum of Yoseph, Ari Mari Gitayana, Vishikmin Li Bishiflasa Vigo. He's saying I had a lot of sycamore trees. Only rich people, as far as the Gemara seems to be saying, only rich people have a lot of sycamore trees. Yonah, how do we know Yonah was rich? Because he gave the fare to go to Tarshisha, and he went onto the ship. What does the Gemara learn? He paid for the whole ship. Right? You know, sometimes you're in the restaurant and you want to pay the bill, and they said, I'm sorry, that guy over there already paid for you, right? Never happened to you? No. Never happens to me. I'm never the guy paying. Hopefully it happens to you where the guy pays for you. So you know, when somebody's rich, so he goes ahead and he says he's got to go on the boat and he needs to rush. Somebody was telling me that happens in Israel when you want to take a shirut. So they'll either wait for 10 people, or if you just get on the shirut and there's only 2 of you, if you pay for the other 8 spots, so then they'll leave and you'll just pay for 10 people. So the same thing, if you want to just, he got on the ship, he's really, why was he in a rush? He was running away from God. He's running away from God. He said, we're not waiting for more people. How many people do you hold? 3,000. Okay, I'll pay for all 3,000. Here's my credit card. And off they were. So that's how we see Yonah was rich. He paid for the entire ship. Amarav Rumnis, how much was it? He paid 4,000 dinar zahav to go on the ship. Rabbi Yochanan says something further, not related. But Moshe Rabbeinu would learn the Torah and he would forget it. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, not just us, even Moshe Rabbeinu would learn and forget it, even though he did a lot of chazara. So in order to remember your learning, you need to learn, you need to chazer, and you need siyata d'shmaya. Usually when you learn in the chazer, so you get the siyata d'shmaya as well. Zok the Mishnah. So the case seems to be that B is not allowed to get any hana from A. Either A took a neder not to give any hana to B, or B took a neder not to get any hana from A. So B is not allowed to get any hana from A. So if A is not allowed to give any hana to B, The Mishnah says that A is still allowed to feed B's wife and kids, even though B needs to feed his own wife and kids. When A feeds B's wife and kids, that's not considered to be a hana for B. Very interesting. The Ran explains. What does it mean? The Ran explains, V'afagav on the left side. V'afagav, the end of the Ran, the first Ran on the Mishnah. V'afagav deha moder mishani. Even though the moder gets hana, she'eno tzarech latil hamazonos, because now B doesn't have to feed his family. Hahi hana dimemelahi. It's not a direct benefit. You're not actually directly benefiting me. You're indirectly benefiting me. I need to feed my wife and kids. They happen to have eaten supper already from somewhere else, i.e. you. Now I don't need to feed them. But that's not considered a direct benefit, that I'm not allowed to get benefit from you. And even though you're not allowed to give me benefit, if you go ahead and you feed my kids, you feed my wife, and now I don't have to feed them, that's considered an indirect benefit, and I can still get that from you, even though I'm not allowed to get benefit from you. But if you're not allowed to give me any benefit, then you're not allowed to feed my animals, whether it's kosher animals or non-kosher animals. Why? Rabbi Lezer says that you can be zan the tameya, but you can't feed my kosher animals. So let's see what the machlok is. What's the difference? Amar lahu shatahora nafsha l'shmaya v'gufa shelo, because the tahora you can go ahead and eat. Utmeya nafsha v'gufa l'shamayim. Since the tahora you can go ahead and eat, so the tahora you're not allowed to feed my tahora. If I'm not allowed to get benefit from you, you can't feed my tahora. Since I can get and I can eat the tahora, so if you feed my tahora, it's going to get fatter. I'll be able to eat it. I'll get more hana from it, and that'll be a direct benefit. My tameya, which I can't eat anyway, so that's not benefit, and therefore you can feed my tameya. So what's the obvious reason that the other one says you can't feed my tameya either? Well, amrulo, they said to him, but there's also a direct benefit if you feed my tameya one. Why? Because even though I can't eat it, because at the end of the day, if you feed my non-kosher animal, so it might not be the same direct benefit where now I can go ahead and eat it. But Lamaisa, if you feed my non-kosher animal, now I can go ahead and I can sell it for more to a non-Jew. They're willing to pay more for a fatter cow, right? We know this if we're in the butcher business. So you know that you're willing to pay more for a fatter cow or a fatter animal. Oh, ma'achila leklavim, or I can feed it to my klavim, and the bigger that my animal is, the more meat I'll have for my dogs. And therefore, the machlokes again is, one opinion says that you can't feed my Torah. Everybody agrees that you can't feed my Torah animals if I'm not allowed to get benefit from you, because the mice I'm going to get direct benefit when I go ahead and eat it. So machlokes by Tameya. It seems that the Svarim seems to make more sense that you can't feed my Tameya either, because even though I don't get the benefit of eating the Tameya, I still get direct benefit when you feed my Tameya, because the mice I could sell it for more money, or I'll have more meat in order to feed my klavim. Very interesting. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Chananya Amar Afuna, Hamoder Hana Mechavera Mutter Lahasi Lobito. And it's very unclear at this point in the Gemara who's not allowed to get any hana from who, but somebody's not allowed to get any hana from somebody else, and in that case, you're still allowed to marry off your daughter to that person. So there's a father-in-law and a son-in-law. Father-in-law has the daughter. So the daughter is allowed to get married to the son-in-law, even though the father-in-law or son-in-law, as we'll see in a second, one of them is not allowed to get any hana from the other one. And we're trying to figure out who's not allowed to get any hana from the other one, and in which case is the Mishnah, in which case is the Gemara talking about. Havi bar Rav Zera b'mayaskinan. So Rav Zera says, what's the case? Elima b'shenichzei avi kala asurin ala chasan. If we say that the property of the father-in-law is asur to the son-in-law, there was a pre-existing neder that the chasan can't get any hana from the father-in-law. Harimoselo shifcha l'shimsho. Don't show this to a woman. It doesn't mean literally a shifcha. But what does that mean? If he's giving over his daughter to the son-in-law is getting a direct benefit from the father-in-law, and it's not possible that that's going to be mutter in the Mishnah. It can't be that the Gemara is saying it's mutter for the father-in-law to give over his daughter to the son-in-law in a case where the son-in-law is not allowed to get any hana from the father-in-law. That's a direct hana. Ran points out that at this point in the Gemara is learning that it's a nara, it's talking about a nara, and the father still controls being able to give over the daughter to whoever he wants, and therefore it's a direct benefit when the father decides to give this nara to this son-in-law. It's a direct benefit, and since the son-in-law can't get any hana from the father-in-law from a pre-existing neder, so clearly that can't be the case, which they're talking about and says, Hamodana mechavera mutter lahasi lobito. That can't be the case. Ela benichse chasan asura al avikala. What's the case? It's where the father-in-law can't get any hana from the son-in-law. Therefore, what's the chiddush? The chiddush is that even though the father-in-law can't get any hana from the son-in-law, the fact that the son-in-law marries his daughter is not considered to be getting hana, because the father-in-law needed to go ahead and feed his daughter before she got married. Now that the son-in-law is married to her, he needs to feed the daughter. The fact that the father-in-law no longer needs to feed his daughter, now that she's married to the son-in-law, is not a direct benefit. What is this? This is similar to the Mishnah. As we said in the Mishnah, Gedalia mizu amar, and that's why it's a shaila. The Gemara says that can't be what he's teaching. We already know that from the Mishnah. Not only do we know that from the Mishnah, we know a bigger chiddush from the Mishnah. Because again, what was the case in the Mishnah? It was the same exact thing. It was a case where I can't get hana from you, and yet even though I can't get hana from you, you're allowed to feed my wife and my kids because you feeding my wife and my kids, and now I don't need to feed them. That's an indirect benefit. That's not a problem. So it seems to be the same thing over here. I can't get hana from you, my father-in-law. You, my father-in-law, can't get hana from me, my son-in-law. But okay, when I marry your daughter, now I need to feed your daughter. But the fact that I feed her and you don't have to feed her anymore, that's an indirect benefit, and that's not considered to be a benefit. And that's why it's a case of mutter lahasilo. But the question is that that's not a chiddush. We already know that from the Mishnah. And not only do we know that from the Mishnah, we know something greater than the Mishnah. Over here, you're telling me that I'm allowed to feed my new wife, and it's not a problem because you're not really getting direct benefit from me. What's that? That's me feeding your kids. We already know in the Mishnah, not only am I allowed to feed your kids, I'm allowed to feed your wife as well. When you can't get any benefit from me, it says in the Mishnah that I can still feed your daughter, but I can also feed your wife. So what's the chiddush here? So must be Gedola mizo amru zanes ishto ve'etzbana ve'alpi shuchai b'mizanosan v'ata amart muta lahasi lo bito. It can't be that that's a chiddush. So the Gemara goes back to the original one. La'olam b'shenichse avi kala asur malachasan. The cases where the father-in-law's property is asur to the chasan. If it's asur to the chasan, then how could it be a case where we said it's mutter for the father-in-law to give over his daughter to the chasan? Lamaisa, the chasan is getting direct benefit from the father-in-law. Ubebito bogeret umidaita. No, we're not talking about a case where she's a nara. If she was a nara and the son-in-law is asur to get hana from the father-in-law, then for sure the father-in-law can't give over the girl to the son-in-law. But it's a case where she's a bogeret. The father-in-law doesn't control the bogeret anymore. When she turns a certain age, 13, whatever, when she has a certain 12 and a half, 13, so now she's allowed to go ahead and she can marry whoever she wants. The father no longer controls her. The father no longer controls her. So then, what does it mean, lahasi abita? So seemingly, it seems like he's allowed to encourage her to get married to this guy. But again, there's no direct benefit to the father. There's no really even indirect benefit to the father at this point, and therefore it's talking about a case where the son-in-law is not allowed to get any hana from the father-in-law, but marrying his daughter, who's a bogeret, is not considered to be getting any hana at all. And that's what the Mishnah, that's what the Gemara is talking about when it says that mutter lahasi lo bito. And even if I can't get any hana from you, I can still marry your daughter, who is already a bogeret. Tanya nami hachi, we have a brisa. Hamoder hana mechavera asur lahasi lo bito. If I can't get any hana from you, so you can't give me your daughter who's a nara, avamasi obito bogeret umidaita. But you can still give me your daughter who is a bogeret, because at the end of the day, it's not considered that I'm getting any hana from you. Amar Rabbi Yaakov. Rabbi Yaakov says, and we'll learn like the Ran, even though the Rosh here explains a little differently. Amar Rabbi Yaakov. Hamadir beno l'talmid Torah. Mutter l'malos o chavish shamayim ulahalik lo asaner. Right, so we all know the famous case. Your kids go to Israel for the year, and they take your credit card. Why are they giving you? Why are you giving them your credit card? Because you don't want them to have to worry about gashmius. You want them to be able to go and learn the whole day. And when they need something quick to eat, so they take the credit card and they go buy something quickly. If they had to go work and make money, then they wouldn't be able to spend as much time learning Torah. So the father takes a neder that even though my son is chayav in kibbud ava'im, I'm taking a that my son does not have to be mechabed me. I don't want him wasting time driving me around and taking me to appointments and stuff like that. I want him sitting and learning the whole time, and therefore I take a neder that my son is not allowed to give me any benefits. Very interesting. It's still mutter l'lamalos o chavish shamayim l'halak lo asaner. The son, even though the father's asur to get benefit from the son now, the son can still fill up the water for the father and can still light the ner. Why? The Ran explains, because those are little things. They take no effort. They take no time. And therefore when the father made the neder that he didn't want his son to be mevatel Torah, i.e. he doesn't want his son to have to take care of him, he didn't have in mind little things like this, which the son can do very quickly during his spare time, during his bein hasidarim. So little things like this the father didn't have in mind, and therefore the son can do it for him. Rav Yitzchak Amar letzalos lo dal katan. No, the father also has in mind that if he doesn't know, fathers don't know how to barbecue, sons know how to barbecue. When he has in mind that he's not going to get any hana from his son, he has also in mind that his son can still barbecue for him, because it's very important for him to barbecue the dal katan, and therefore his son can still do the barbecue for him. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. If again I can't get any hana from you either because you swore not to give me any hana or I swore not to get any hana from you. However, mutter lashkosa kos shel shalom. I can't get any hana from you, but you can still fill up a kos shel shalom for me. What's a kos shel shalom? Nihu hachatargimo a kos shel beis avel. As we learned in another mesachta that they used to drink a tremendous amount at the beis avel, right? And then they lowered it, they lessened it because the people were getting drunk. The avelim were getting drunk. I think the Sephardim and the Chabadnik still hold to this, but every day, right? We drink every day. The Sephardim still hold it. I don't even know if the Chabadim. I was actually at a shiva recently, and he told me that Chabad doesn't drink wine during Avelis. I never heard of it. Right, I never heard of it. But the Ashkenazim do drink wine during Avelis. Ashkenazim drink wine during Avelis. We don't just drink. We don't drink wine during Aninus. Between the time of the death and the burial, then you're not allowed to have any basar or yayin. But after the death, you're allowed to have basar and yayin. So this time, at a case where the guy's not allowed to get any hana from the other guy, but getting the kos in the base avel, you giving the guy the kos in the base avel, giving him a kos in the base avel, that's not considered to be getting hana. But marava amrei kos shel beis hamerchat. So to the beis hamerchat, when you go to the Spitz house, when you go to the bath house, so it's healthier to drink something after you come out of the Spitz. I don't know. I guess sounds like if it's a warm Spitz, or it's somehow it's healthier to drink something when you come out. And even though you're not allowed to get any hana from the other guy, B can't get any hana from A. Lamai said B can still get a little cup of water from A when he's coming out of the Schwitz because it's healthier. The Ran points out in the fifth line from the bottom on the right side, Mipnei darke shalom shayadarke bakach. One can say either it's healthier or by an avel, we make an exception, but seemingly it's just because of darke shalom. Darke shalom, so you could help out a person who's in avelis, you could help out a person who's coming out of the bathhouse, even though there's a neder that you're not really allowed to help the guy out. Fine. V'lo yazon es behemto, bain, etc. And you can't go ahead and feed the behemoths, and again we explained that either you can't feed, everybody agrees you can't feed the kosher behemoths, there's machlokas whether you could feed the tamei behemoths or not. But over here the Gemara says, Tanya Yoshua ish Uza Omer, Yoshua ish Uza says, Zan avoda v'shivchos avaknanim. Even though you can't feed the behemoths, you can feed his avadim. That means even if B can't get any hana from A could still feed the shifchas and the avad of aknamim of B. Why? V'lo yazon es Mendel ben tamei ben Torah. My time. What's the reason? Interesting. Avada v'shifchos of aknanim leminichrusa avdinan. They were made to be torn apart. Behema lepitume abida. And a behema is made to be fattened. What does that mean, to be torn apart? So there's different pshatim. Look at the last line in the Ran. Second to last line on the page. Ve'ika degarsi limmichnerusa, not limincherusa, limincherusa. Seems to be the same thing. Klomar she'in omdim la'achila el nechira bi'alma. Very interestingly, it sounds like the whole thing, the way he's learning, is the whole thing by the animals is because they'll be able to be eaten. Either when they die and they're tahora, you'll be able to eat them, so they're worth more if you fatten them now, or when they die, so then they'll be worth more to be eaten by non-Jews. It's all about being eaten. But since an eved and a shivcha is not eaten, hopefully, when they die. So therefore, since they're not eaten when they die, so the fact that they're being fattened up, the fact that they're being zanned over here, so it doesn't have any benefit. If anything, the Ram points out on top that by a regular animal, that if you feed them, so it might not be a problem, because at the end of the day, you're making them fatter and you're making them lazier. As we know, as human beings, the more we eat, the more lazy we get and the less productive we are. So it could be, if anything, that it's not considered a benefit at all to feed my shvachos and my avadim, because the more you feed them, the better meals you give them, the fatter they're going to get and the healthier they're going to get, and the less they're going to be productive. So he seems to be saying that since the shvachot and the avadim, when they die, are not eaten by anybody, therefore it's not considered to be a benefit when you fatten them, and therefore, even though I can't get any hana from you, you're allowed to fatten up my avadim and my shvachos. Zak the Mishnah, and we'll stop after the Mishnah. Hamoder hana mechavero. It's a case where B can't get any hana from A, or A can't get any hana from B. It's not clear. We'll have to see in the Gemara. Somebody can't get hana from somebody else, and then the guy gets sick. So let's say A gets sick. So the question is, can B go ahead and visit A? Well, I guess it'll depend if A is not allowed getting hana from B, or B is not allowed getting hana from A. What's the hana that A would get from B? Well, he would get the hana of the visit. What's the hana that B would get from A? Well, it depends. If you're going to visit A in his house, and you're standing in his property, so if there was no property there, you'd fall right through the house, or some other, whatever other benefit you get. So somebody can't get benefit from somebody else. Says the Mishnah, still hamodana mechaver v'nichnas al bakro. For some reason, omeid aval lo yoshe. When the guy goes to visit, he can stand, but he can't sit. Okay. Umirafo refuas hanefesh. He could give him a spiritual healing. What does that sound like? He could daven for him. Avalo refuas mamon, but he can't give him a physical healing. He can't physically help him. He can't do anything physical for him. And we'll have to see in the Gemara again who's not allowed to get any hana from who. and what exactly is the difference between standing and sitting, giving a spiritual and a physical. Looking forward. I'll see you again tomorrow.